live.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Indie Film Group show. I'm your host, Brianna Young. We have a really exciting episode today because we have a really prolific writer joining us. His name is Courtney Joyner. He's an author, a screenwriter, a director, and sometimes occasional actor. He's a 40-plus year veteran in the screenwriting trade and a prolific writer in the Western author world. So, hello, Courtney. We're so excited to have you today.
Oh, well, thank you very much. This is very exciting.
So, I'm really excited that you're an author because I'm actually writing my first novel. I actually wrote I wrote it in script form first. It's like 200 pages, and then now I'm going in and writing it in novel version. Is that insane? Is that insane to do?
No, it's not. Actually, I wrote a book for Tor Books that came out 2 Christmases ago. It was a sequel to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea called Nemo Rising. That was, in fact, a pilot that had been an off again thing for almost 20 years. I finally went ahead. I had one producer who has just never given up hope on it. And then I wrote the novel. The novel came out, and the novel has been optioned. MPCA has optioned it. And I think we are finally going to get to pilot into a series. And it's been a long journey. But I used the screenplay as a way to get the book deal. And in fact, I was very lucky because I met a great editor from Tor, told him about the project. Actually, a friend of mine told him, and he thought it was going to be like a movie tie-in. And then all the financing, the deal to do the pilot or the feature version of the script, we had Hugh Bonneville and Haley Atwell and all these people from Downton Abbey involved with this thing. And then it collapsed. And we were in the Hollywood Reporter and all the rest of this stuff. So, I mean, it happens, you know.
It does.
It's a rough journey. So I had to call my publishers and tell them there was not going to be a movie to support the novel. And they gave it some consideration and had me write the novel anyway.
I love that. That's sad that the movie wasn't made, right? It was never made.
It was never made, except now I'd always aimed for it to be for television. I reconfigured it as a pilot, and we used the novel and the pilot as what been optioned by MPCA. Amy Krell is the producer, and when things calm down, we hope to be shooting. But they've done a great job on her side. But it's been a long haul.
Really? Like years of it?
25 years.
25 years? Whew. That's a long time to be committed to a project.
Yeah. And it kept generating money along the way because it kept getting optioned and things like that. But hopefully now we'll finally get going.
So do you feel that writing a novel or writing a book can help you sell that it can help you legitimize a project and help it get off the ground to maybe be something else besides a novel, to be a television show or a movie?
Yes. The thing is, once you've got your idea in print, whatever the format is, a graphic novel, is it, fiction, whatever it is, suddenly it becomes an IP, and that's what everybody is drawn to now. It certainly seems that way. It's something that, whether it has a true fan base or not, doesn't really seem to make any difference, but it has an identity. And also, look, let's face it, nobody ever wants to be the first one to say yes. So you drop a novel or some other creation on an executive's desk, he knows someone else has already taken that chance. And so there's already an endorsement of what you've created.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, yeah. And you can always, and they were great props in meetings too. You walk in there and you're throwing books around and everything, and yeah.
So what got you inspired into being into writing for like Western material? I'm really interested that you kind of floated that route for a lot of your books.
Well, the thing was, I had because I'd always loved westerns, and of course, when I was writing a lot of movies and B movies and some television and things like that, westerns were completely out of fashion, and nobody was interested in making any. So I still love the form, and I love the filmmakers and all of that, and I had tried actually to get into the Western Writers of America, um, and was rejected because I didn't have a Western in print and fiction. I didn't have any credentials at all that they would recognize. And so because I wanted to really try and dive into the world of mass market paperbacks with no background at all, not even short fiction, really, just the idea that I could do it. I finally got into the Western Writers of America. And I've always been a big believer in writers' groups. And they actually let me in because I'd written a lot of articles about Western movies. So my movie journalism is what allowed me access to the group. And oh my gosh, it changed my life because I went to the first convention and oh my gosh, I mean, just John Jakes and all these people are there, and you're just, kind of overwhelmed because these giants are there suddenly giving you encouragement. And I was just going, well, I knew, who everybody was, but I didn't have any real background. And they were like, why are you, so timid about this? Jump in. Look, we'll help you. Let me recommend you to a publisher. Let me do that. It was the most generous group I'd ever encountered. Right. It was amazing. And later on, I did an interview for a collection of Western interviews called The Westerners, and Elmore Leonard became a big part of it. And he was so generous to me. And I'll tell you, the thing that I discovered with these, not just because they wrote Westerns, but is that all of these writers that I had encountered who were so generous with their time and their support thought of themselves as novelists first. The movies came as like a bonus. So they weren't pursuing Hollywood in the normal way. Hollywood came to them generally. And so the kind of scrambling, cutthroat insecurity and some of that stuff that unfortunately we've all encountered at one time or another just didn't seem to exist. And everybody was just entirely secure because they existed in one form. And then, yes, they also, were involved with movies. And of course, the movies that everyone I met they were involved with were like, the biggest movies that were made. So that's a real nice cushion. But, it was not, they loved it, and they loved working on films, and of course had huge Hollywood careers. But it was the fiction writing that is what mattered most to them.
I love that. Have you ever been to the town Tombstone?
I sure have. Oh yeah.
So my family, they actually moved over to Arizona, and they're just like 30 minutes away from Tombstone. So every time I go over and visit them, I'm always going to Tombstone, and I've just fallen in love with the like Western world. My horror movie that's going to be coming out pretty soon. It's my first debut feature-length film. It's like a gothic Western movie. So that was kind of like my first dabble into like this Western horror world. But when I go over to Tombstone, I'll see all of these cowboy reenactors, and it's just such a time capsule. You really feel like you're back in time. And I met these historians the last time I was there, and I was telling them that I was a filmmaker down here in California, and they were like, "Oh, well, there every 25 years there's a movie made about Tombstone. Do you know that, young lady?" And I was like, "Oh no, I don't know that." And they were like, "Yes, every 25 years there's a movie made about Tombstone, and guess what it is?" And they were like, "It's been 25 years." And they're looking at me like, And he was like, "Baby, you can go and make this next Tombstone movie, young lady."
There you go.
And he was so nice, and he gave me his number, and he was like, "I just want to let you know, like, we're the main historians here, and we would just bend over backwards for you in anything that you need to get, another movie made about Tombstone." How can you turn that down?
Well, you can, and I can certainly understand why. Okay, question for you: what's your favorite Wyatt Earp film?
I've never seen Tombstone. I've seen like bits and pieces of it, but there's something about the Wyatt Earp story that there's other Western movies that I love more, like Once Upon a Time in the West. That's my favorite Western movie. My mom is so obsessed with the Wyatt Earp movies, and she prefers the Kevin Costner one. So that's the one I feel like I need to watch first. I have a feeling that's probably the one that I'm gonna like more, because
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I don't want to.
I heard that the Kevin Costner one is more accurate. I don't know if you know anything about that.
Yes, the Dan Gordon wrote the Costner movie, and it is, if you will, kind of the counter Tombstone.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't really like it, only because it's definitely more somber, and it definitely takes the take that the Earps were just kind of bullies with badges, and not the heroic look at them. The one I would suggest for you that I think your mom probably also really loves, Hour of the Gun, with James Garner's Wyatt Earp and Jason Robards as Doc Holliday.
Okay.
I'll
write that one down.
That's the movie about the period after the gunfight of the OK Corral, when Wyatt Earp was charged with murder.
Okay, see, that seems more interesting to me, because and even when this man was telling me, make a movie about Tombstone, to me, I was thinking I wouldn't make a movie about the Wyatt Earp story. To me, I'm really interested in the whole prostitution and how bad it was there. Like, it was, so many women would like kill themselves, commit suicide, just god awful stories. So I've really been interested in like the soiled doves kind of side to things, and then also how they were like performers at the little opera and theater houses.
Absolutely.
I love that. It's called the Birdcage Theater in Tombstone, and they have these old original portraits of these women. They were called the Fly Women, and they had magnets on their shoes, and there would be a magnet in the ceiling, and they would walk on the ceiling. I can't even imagine that they really did that, but I guess they did. So I would love to see that on film or in a story. I really do. Like that whole soiled doves performer, showgirl type thing. It's really interesting to me.
Big Nose Kate. And, Doc Holliday's lady. And,
yes.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, here I'll tell you, sir. Once Upon a Time in the West. And this is pretty strange that this happened. Now it's kind of common knowledge, I guess. A long time ago, I got to know Jack Elam a little bit, and he was a great guy. And this would have been around 1981, 82, so that maybe a little bit later. But I did an interview with Jack for a magazine, and he started talking about the opening sequence and the fact that the actor Al Mulak committed suicide while they were filming that scene. And I was like, what? And he said, you didn't know that? Okay. Now, I don't know the last time you saw the movie. But
I just saw it 3 months ago.
Oh, okay. So there's the opening with Jack and Woody Strode and Al Mulak waiting at the train station for Charles Bronson. Okay. Mm-hmm. So Sergio Leone's idea was to basically kind of shoot around the clock with all three of these actors. So do all the stuff with everything he possibly could do with Woody Strode from every possible angle, then repeat the process with Jack Elam, and then repeat the process with Al Mulak, and then he'd be able to intercut it absolutely any way that he wanted to. Okay. So everybody was okay with this. And they started to shoot with Woody Strode and the water dripping on the brim of his hat and everything. And Alan Locke started to get a little upset because he said, well, wait a minute, where are we in this? And they explained it to him again, like, right now we're in the background. This is Woody's time. And then, we'll get to you and he'll be in the background for you and it'll all even out. Well, he kind of was getting agitated. So what they did is they shot a little bit with him where, if you remember, he comes in and yanks down the wires to the telegraph.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, teases the parakeet in the cage.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So they wrap for the day. The next day, they've kind of shot everything they need to with Woody Strode. The next day, they start everything with Jack Elam. And it goes very slowly because they're trying to get a fly to land on Jack's face.
Oh, my gosh.
And it isn't happening. And they covered his face with watermelon juice. And it was so hot that it crystallized on his face. Now, Jack was an extraordinarily good bridge player, and he was in bridge tournaments all the time, and was going to be in an international bridge tournament. And his wife was there on set waiting to leave to go enter this bridge tournament with her husband. And it keeps dragging on and on. Finally, they did the thing with the fly, and it was actually an artificial bug. And he shoves his gun against it and then listens to it inside the barrel of the pistol.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Al Malak is getting extremely upset because he's like, this is happening again. I am not on camera. They try and mollify him. They do a shot of him standing on the planked, deck of the train station platform. And then everybody wraps out and they go home. And Jack washes his face and goes and plays cards. The next day, they arrive. That night, Al took this to heart so badly, he threw himself off the balcony of his hotel room and killed himself.
What?
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
You watch that movie, and you watch that opening, and there is a moment, and Jack was telling me this, I was flabbergasted. And he goes, Courtney, you watch. Watch for the moment, because there is a definite point where you never see Al's face again. It was a double. It was one of Sergio Leone's assistants who had blonde hair, and we shot him from the back. And it's true. You watch that sequence, and suddenly you never see that character from the front again.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to go home and watch that tonight.
Yep. Absolutely.
That is insane. I was going to say that's a great Easter egg. That's a sad Easter egg.
It is a sad Easter egg. Yeah, but I'll never forget when Jack told me this whole thing, and he just couldn't believe I didn't know it already.
I've never heard of that, and that's wow. He must have had a really, really, really bad day.
Yes. Yes, very good. And so there we go. But I love that film. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. And when and as you know, Sergio Leone and Henry Fonda were not very fond of each other immediately. And Fonda was very
upset. I didn't know that.
Fonda was upset when he went to Spain because he had grown kind of an Edwin Booth mustache and put in brown contact lenses. And Leone made him shave the mustache and take out the lenses and said, no, I want the Henry Fonda. I want Mr. Roberts. I need the classic image of you and play against that type as this despicable, heavy, and here you are shooting a 10-year-old boy.
Yeah. And
Fonda did as requested, but he was so they've already kind of started on a wrong foot, and very early in the shooting schedule was the love scene with him and Claudia Cardinale.
Yes.
He was not happy about that. He didn't know her at all. They had barely shaken hands. Oh. He was kind of uptight about doing something like that anyway. Mm. And he could not understand why before they even have a chance to at least act more scenes together or, kind of get on the same thing, you would ask them to do something so intimate. But Leone insisted. They shot the scene. But what they didn't tell Henry Fonda was she was pregnant.
Oh my goodness, she was
And
pregnant?
and they wanted to get this done before she started to show.
Oh my, wow.
Yep. And okay, something else to look for. You look through that film and you'll see her clothes get looser and looser.
Yes, they do.
And she's like carrying a lot of buckets and things. That's why.
Wow. Well, she was beautiful. I mean, I'm glad that they like stuck with her and they didn't recast. But wow, I love that. Thank you for sharing that information with me. I'm really excited to go and look for those now.
You're more than welcome.
So I actually wanted to talk to you about your like writing schedule. So how often do you write? And are you like a morning person, a noon person, a night person, an all the time person? So I'm really curious.
I'm so colossally disorganized. I generally do. I'm a bit of a night bird, so I do prefer writing late into the evening. I think it's, but with fiction, you're just so consumed with it all the time, and you're kind of always thinking about it. So anytime I can just jump out of bed and jump onto the desk where I am right now, and then I just go. Other times, like with film journalism and stuff, you have to kind of assemble. I do a lot. I like to do a lot of scribbling on notepads and things like that. And certain things require a lot of research. If you're writing, see, I've gotten myself into a real trap, I think, because I love working on certainly with fiction and screenplays and stuff, period stuff. But that always requires a lot of research.
Yes.
And but that's a trap too, because you suddenly you're looking on the internet and you're going to your own library, and it can just days and days turns into weeks and weeks, and you really haven't done any constructive writing. You've just been gathering information to kind of get yourself up and running. And I mean, one of the greatest things in the world is not writing. So, anyone who doesn't admit to that, I don't know. It's terrible, but I'd rather, sit someplace with a friend and have a couple of beers and talk about what I'm going to do rather than actually do it.
Oh, see, I'm the type of person. I'm the type of person where, like, if someone asks me to go do something and I'm like right in the middle of writing, like I want to go bail on them, but I force myself to go out and socialize.
Oh, see, well, that's the good way. Yeah, I'm terrible. I'm running down the garden path all the time. But it's but also I think it depends on what the form that you're working on is, kind of where your mental thing goes. Because in the morning, if in a shower or whatever, literally that's usually where I'm like thinking about where I'm going to pick up from where I left off the night before, and get going again. And you go, because the light can turn on at any moment.
Yes.
So that's why I say I'm kind of disorganized, because you're driving down the street or you're eating a hamburger or whatever it is, and suddenly, oh my gosh, I know how to fix this or fix that.
That's usually when those ideas come to you.
Yes.
I wanted to tell you, I saw this. It was a Twitter quote. Someone's posted on Twitter. It said, "I love being a writer. It feels like you always have homework due at all times."
That's absolutely true. And, well, what's that? Was it Dorothy Parker who says, "I hate writing, but I love having written"?
Can you say that again? I want it to really let it sink in.
Yes, I hate writing, but I love having written.
I can relate to that. I can relate, and I think what Dorothy means by that is the process is like, ugh, but then once you're finished, you're like, wow.
Oh, sure.
Do you think that's what she meant by that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know that when I had my first novel published, and it was a Western. Oh my gosh, when that box of books arrived, and I opened that thing up, and there it was, and it was a mass market paperback. And I love the fact that it was like that. So like, oh my God, this is like, being at the beach in 1966. There it is. Oh my, I mean, that was just being right over the moon. And there was just so much satisfaction to that. Yeah, I just loved it.
So, Courtney, when you get an idea for a book or a script, can you guide us through your process from start to publish, basically?
Well, with the novels, I would say I've been extraordinarily lucky with one thing. I never had to write a novel on spec. Every single novel I've ever written, I was contracted for.
Oh, okay, amazing. So can you actually just let me know what that means? So does that mean that you're being contracted to write the book before you even get the idea, basically?
Yeah, I had
Okay.
the Western series that I did for Pinnacle Books for Kensington, Shotgun. I had gotten to know the editor at Kensington, Gary Goldstein, very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd actually worked on a few movie books for his company. Also owned the publishing house Citadel Books, and they specialized in film books. And so I worked on a few film books with Gary. And then they had published a short story of mine in a collection I'm very proud of being in, called Law of the Gun. And my gosh, I was in with Lauren Esselman and John Jakes and Andrew Fenady. I mean, some real heavyweights. And they made my story the anchor story of the collection. I couldn't even believe it. And then Gary started talking to me about writing a novel. And he said, well, this was at the time, Django Unchained had not come out yet.
Mm-hmm.
And what he wanted to do, because one of the tentpole titles of Kensington Books is the William Johnstone series that you see in the Walmarts. And so, I mean, you see hundreds of these books in these stores, in these box stores. And they wanted something they felt would go with kind of a younger audience, or somebody like more attuned to like spaghetti westerns and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I've been trying to get this idea going. I hadn't written anything out except as a presentation for a comic book, because I thought I could get it done as a graphic novel. And I had artwork and an outline of a script and all the rest of this stuff, and even some notes on a cartoon series, but nothing for a novel at all. So I gave Gary all this stuff. I said, look, it's a guy who runs around, his arm is a shotgun, and he's killing the guys that killed his wife. And he said, and he looked at it and he said, do you have a copy of Quentin's script for Django Unchained? I said, yeah, I do. I sent him the script. He went into the boardroom at Kensington, threw all of this material on the table and said, this is the next character for a younger audience, for us. And literally about 12 hours later, he sent me an email and they had contracted me for 2 books.
Wow.
And I had no idea what the hell I was doing.
You were like, well, I guess I have to write 2 books now.
Yeah, I mean, literally, that was it. But they really threw me into the deep end of the pool. And like when I told you about the Captain Nemo thing, I had a screenplay, gave it to an editor, and then they contracted me for a novel. So I've been extremely lucky with that, and not, have a stack of novels, manuscripts I haven't been able to sell or anything like that. So I was really, to jump over that step was really just extraordinary. And look, I did not have a literary agent. I have an agent, a very good manager for my movie stuff, but I did not have a literary agent. I knew it only because I got to know editors through a writing group.
So what advice would you give to a younger aspiring author who has finished their book? What do they do with it? How do they get it? How would you suggest they get it published? And then also let's talk, literary agents? Are they necessary?
Well, that's kind of a real double-edged sword because there are so many options now. I've thought about doing something straight for Amazon as an ebook. You can do things, print on demand. There are so many small presses now because the technology for book construction and book printing has been so vastly improved, and it's a lot cheaper than it used to be. And so I think that literally, whether you want to start with Amazon or do you want to try and go with the New York publishing houses, well, they're really down to a very limited few. And I was lucky because I jumped over the fence. But the thing is, with a lot of manuscripts, they just go to a slush pile, and sometimes they absolutely rise to the top. Other times they don't. Now, if that's your target, if you want to be, in at Doubleday or someplace like that, that is where the literary agent is absolutely mandatory unless you have gotten to know somebody who works for that particular publishing house.
Got it.
But if those New York houses aren't necessarily on your radar, and they don't have to be, because it doesn't mean you won't have good distribution. It doesn't mean my gosh, just going into like the Writer's Digest marketplace or whatever, it's expanded like crazy because there are now all these other avenues in which to get something published. And if you want to focus specifically on ebooks, oh my God, I mean, there are just so many places to go with your manuscript. And it's so much more of an open field than it used to be. And so, I mean, and also too, there's just things like online magazines and things like that now take fiction, and it's just a whole world of possibilities that exist, I think.
Well, and do you think the kind of genre that you are focusing on, do you think that changes your direction on which publishing company you'll go through, or if you do an ebook situation?
Oh God, yes. I remember at one of the Western Writers conferences, Faith Black, who was a big editor, as I remember, she was with Penguin Books, and a very nice lady. And she came basically to announce that Penguin had decided to completely discontinue every single series Western that they were publishing, and they were publishing a lot. Oh, wow. And the market had fallen out for them. So what happened there, though, was that Kensington stayed with the genre, and then their sales just skyrocketed. Now, they're extremely good in getting their product into places like Walmart and Kmart, and my gosh, I had a friend take a picture of a couple of my books that were in a CVS pharmacy in like Arkansas. I mean, they were all over the place. But, and now the other publishers are kind of looking at Westerns again. But as far as, the big genres that make the enormous money, you are looking at romance. Then come the thrillers, the James Patterson style, what have you, and then adventure things, like Clive Cussler, and then of course you have the enormous fantasy market. But okay, let's put it this way: Western Writers of America, which have some real big, Larry McMurtry, I mean, big boys in that group. Okay, we're meeting in Tucson, Arizona. The Romance Writers of America meet in Paris.
Wow.
So yeah, that gives you an idea of that's that market is still so enormous and just absolutely ironclad.
So I actually want to ask you a question that's a little more specific and geared towards to what I'm doing right now. I have a country music drama novel that, like I said, I have it in script form, and now I'm going in and I'm writing it in novel form. Well, once I have it all ready to go, would you suggest that I maybe look in the Nashville publishing market since it's a country music drama?
Absolutely, and I think that's a great strategy. And now with the script too, I mean, have you approaching someone who you'd like to see attached to it, or can move it forward? And also, here's the thing too: since you have the screenplay, the fact that it will exist as a book, my God, that just ups, if you will, the value of your script. Seriously.
So would you suggest that I wait for the book to come out before I go and try to attach anyone with a script?
You know, that's tough. I would say if you have that opportunity, you know, that breathing room to do it, then yes. Because again, just having that prop of that book in one hand and the script in the other, that puts you miles ahead of everybody else that development exec is going to see that day.
Well, that makes me feel better.
Yeah, and it's certainly it does, you know, for me. And here, I don't know if I can. Is it okay if I get up to grab something?
Oh, of course.
Okay. Well, that's right, because we're not. All right. Now, here was my additional little thing. I had decided that I thought my Nemo Rising was also great fodder for games. So I went ahead and actually commissioned the design of one, and I was stunned that WizKids and Mega picked it up. Here it is. It came out last Christmas. Here it is.
Oh, how cool. It looks awesome.
No, it did very well. They did a gorgeous job on it, but I had to, you know, kind of roll the dice and decide that I wanted to do this. And I was very lucky because I was introduced to a game designer who would, you know, my gosh, he goes, well, Courtney, I think this would be good. Do you think we could work together? And they had, my gosh, they had done X-Men and the Harry Potter and, you know, all the Marvel titles and some of the Star Wars things. I said, yeah, I think you have enough of a background to be able to carry this off. And so, you know, I threw in with them and they did this gorgeous job. But then once it existed in design form and everything else, it had to go to like gaming conventions where it was kind of beta tested. They'd made prototypes, and fortunately it gained attention there from WizKids and some of the bigger outfits, and WizKids ended up buying it and putting it out last year. Yeah.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was really neat. I was very very pleased. But again, you know, right now we're trying to get the TV show going and everything else, but you know, I'm throwing books, I'm hurling games, I'm, you know,
You're throwing a lot of stuff on people's desks.
Yes, I am. Yes. Before security was called.
So I actually kind of wanted to circle back to screenwriting agents and literary agents. By the way, is it a screenwriting agent and a literary agent? Are they the same thing?
No.
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 What's the difference?
Well, I actually have a screenwriting manager, and he looks over my book contracts and things like that. But the world of publishing has its own touchstones, and just like the world of movies. And so, you know, the lit agents, the big ones, they know exactly who the editors are. And just like with movie studios, boy, those guys play musical chairs within their companies all the time. So they know who is where, and more specifically, what they are looking for.
Okay. But just to be clear, do the literary agents, are they only working with books, or are they also handling screenplays as well?
Usually, the lit agents that I know generally, I mean, they focus on books and then will hand off, say, negotiations and things. If they have some super big clients, then they deal with movie studios all the time.
Okay.
But the actual like screenplay negotiations and things like that usually go to a screenwriting agent or a manager.
Okay. So say if when do you think it comes time for someone that needs a screenwriting agent or a literary manager? Where do you think it comes in time where someone should go out and seek those people?
Well, of course, right now there's also this great open field, I think, with things like contests.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether it's that or my gosh, needs agents and things, they've opened up like the ability to submit to things like the blacklist.
Yes.
And so there are just all these, different platforms where, something can get noticed.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, I just think that is always. I mean, as a rule, what happens is when you get a manager or what have you, it's usually because the manager has approached you,
Yeah.
not that you have sought them out.
Got it. Well, what do you think these managers or these agents? What are they? What are they exactly looking for in a client to take on?
Oh gosh, I mean, of course, it's always who's the new voice, who is got an original approach to something, but it's also now with all of the streaming platforms and the need for product is so bloody enormous that honestly, I because this is kind of where what I'm focused on as well. I think everyone really needs to look at the market and go, okay, theatrical movies kind of exist in their own bubble. And if you can break into that bubble, that is just extraordinary. However, the amount of product and the opportunity right now on television is just unprecedented. So if I was sitting down to work on something, or I have, then I think in terms of 8 to 10 episode television, pilot, outline of other episodes, show Bible, all of that stuff. And it doesn't mean not to write a feature film, but there is just or specifically also if you're going to just go for the 90 to 2 hour format for your story, I would think in terms of a movie for cable.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now, whether because of the pandemic or whatever it is, eventually that's kind of the home for things at the moment.
Yes.
And I think it's going to kind of continue that way for a while. So that I think that needs to be kept in mind, particularly if you're going out with something and it is being built in such a way that it can actually be done for reasonable money.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is really important. If there's anything consistent, certainly if you're going to, look, if you're, Graham Yost, you can do anything you want to, but for everybody else, you're going, okay, this is not going to be given J.J. Abrams money, but I think this can be done for $5 million or whatever, whatever it might be. But you kind of have that swimming in the back of your head, because to write something, say, on the level of Star Wars or Aquaman, that is really setting yourself up for an incredible struggle to get it in front of the right eyeballs.
Yeah. I'm really happy that I'm not. I love watching those movies. I love watching fantasy movies. But I don't write them. I can't. I'm a director also and a producer, so I like to write things that I could personally go out and try to produce on my own, and also not sell myself short. I mean,
well, no, but that's smart, because the thing is too, because I get, you see things on screenwriting boards and what have you, and oh my gosh, I've got this great idea for the next Mission Impossible or whatever it might be. And a lot of folks who are, interested in writing movies at that level don't quite understand that those movies are assignments, that the studios hire those writers to create that material.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys aren't, suddenly going, oh my gosh, I think I've got a great idea for Green Lantern, and go over to Warner Brothers. No, it doesn't work that way.
Although I am actually a little sad that Frankenstein is actually copyrighted by Universal Studios. So you can do like Mary Shelley's version of Frankenstein, which is actually a different version of what we know as Frankenstein. We know Frankenstein to look like the Universal Studios Hollywood version. But yeah, I had an idea a few months ago and I was like, oh, no, throwing that idea out.
Well, it's Universal's position on that is a little weird. And I wondered if, because for a long time, the old Jack Pierce makeup was copywritten. And when Hammer Films did Curse of Frankenstein, they had to create a new makeup for Christopher Lee because that movie was being distributed by Warner Brothers. Then they kept away from the classic flat top and the bolts and all that stuff until they did The Evil of Frankenstein, which Universal was going to distribute. The makeup was, I'm sorry, God forgive me, Roy Ashton, it's not very good. And so, that classic, if you will, 1930s design is something they've been very protective of. Yeah. And you're right, because there are so many other, versions of Frankenstein. And what I was fascinated by, because I don't think Lionsgate distributed Gods and Monsters, but they did actually recreate the classic Frankenstein makeup in that film. And so there was a case of I think because it was a tribute, where they were able to get specific permission.
From Universal?
Yeah.
Okay.
And be able to sidestep it. But but you're right. Other than that, you're going to, is it the way Robert De Niro looked in the Kenneth Branagh, or any of these? I mean, there have been so many different variations of the Frankenstein monster, but the classic Jack Pierce, Boris Karloff is still their property.
I would love to see a version of their Frankenstein done. I mean, I don't know, Universal Studios needs to get working.
Well, they keep trying to, these reboots of, the classic monsters, and they've been threatening that remake of Creature from the Black Lagoon forever. And, oh my God, the Tom Cruise Mummy just drove me absolutely crazy.
Oh, I didn't watch it because I was such a fan of the old Mummy movies that when I saw the trailer for that one, it just looked god awful.
And that's the thing too, is you're going, wait a minute, guys, you're actually going back to the Alfred Molina Raiders of the Lost Ark Mummy movies. We thought you were going to go back to, the actual, Imhotep story, the reincarnation story of the first film, and which I think would have been so much more interesting, because I think what Blumhouse did with The Invisible Man was very interesting.
I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard very good things. I've been writing so much lately. I have not watched enough of things that have come out. Shame on me.
How in the world did you get exposed to all these Universal horror movies?
I'm sorry?
I said, how did you get exposed to all these Universal horror movies?
Well, when you're in the car and you're driving and these ideas come to your head, I was randomly thinking about Frankenstein. I was like, and I Googled into the whole Frankenstein thing, and I found out that he's copyrighted and all of that. And I am a big fan of the Black Lagoon, though. I think that would that would be really cool. Although The Shape of Water, I mean, let's be honest, they did that kind of right.
And
But the Black Lagoon, it could really be its own creepy, weird story. I think that they should do it. I think it would be cool.
no, it's, there's always just so much. What I've always loved about those movies, of course, I grew up with them. You can see behind me, all this stuff, is that except for, say, somebody like James Whale, who directed, Frankenstein and Bride and The Invisible Man and everything, that most of those movies were actually made by, certainly like when you get into World War II, with Lon Chaney and the Wolfman and everything, those movies were created by like journeyman filmmakers. The writers and the directors were these guys who were expected to do everything. They were directing Abbott and Costello movies, and then they were directing westerns, and then they were doing a musical, and then they were doing a horror movie, and then they were off doing something else. So they were kind of these jacks of all trades, are the guys who actually created this stuff that has become culturally iconic. I find that pretty interesting.
Wow, that is pretty interesting.
Yeah, they were just the guys under contract, and they were handed a script, and they jumped at it.
Wow. Interesting. Well, Courtney, I think we're going to kind of wrap up here. I do want to ask you a few more questions.
Sure.
But what advice would you give to young aspiring screenwriters and authors?
Well, I mean, for screenwriters, here is the thing. The opportunity to make your own movies and create your own films has never been greater. Look, I graduated from college in 1982. So when my roommates and we just started to make our own movies, if you're going to make a movie, you still had to raise like $50,000 or $100,000 to do like the cheapest one, because you were shooting on film. You had to have a laboratory. You had to have editing bays. I mean, all this stuff, and a regular crew. And then when it was done, was anybody going to see it? Now, you can actually write something that you care about, go out, shoot it with portable equipment. There's editing software that's installed on so many laptops and posted on YouTube. I mean, it's incredible that all of, the steps that we were having to take way back when, even 25 years ago, have been basically eliminated. And I think that that's just so terrific, because it gives any screenwriter the opportunity to at least showcase or show, and demo. You can record a script reading. You can do all kinds of things to get your work noticed that just heretofore was just not available. And so that's what I would do. I think, and that's what a lot of people do now, just in the course of trying to raise money, whether through Kickstarter or Indiegogo or something. And, it's you're not bound by any rules anymore. So now, of course, you have to write it. And if you're going to do it yourself, you have to write, as you have to write it smart, because you have to create something that you personally have the ability to pull off. And then you can go do it. And even if it's just, let's get some people together and do a couple of scenes or whatever, but that is the greatest intro in the world, I think, to then get something noticed and read.
Absolutely.
Like step one. And they go, hey, this makes sense. Let's look at what the script is. Let's look at the budget.
And there's also great ways for your movies to be seen now with all of these film festivals. I mean, there's like thousands of them. There's so many.
Oh, yeah. That used to be such a closed shop and just such a narrow field. And, oh my God, if I don't get into Sundance, I'm going to kill myself. It literally was that way. And now, it doesn't matter because of online festivals and all these other wonderful things that just give opportunity for the work to be exposed, which really is what we're talking about. Because
Yeah.
when it's exposed, then someone's going to react and, to hopefully take the next steps.
And it's probably a little weird. I haven't done the online festivals yet with the pandemic, but I can imagine it probably feels a little weird winning an award from like, oh honey, I won this award, But that kind of sucks that we can't be going in person right now and showing our films, and the theaters are shut down. And I feel like we're having a huge revolution right now with the industry.
Well, we are, because the dynamic of exhibition and production and everything else has just been turned completely upside down. And no one knows how it's going to shake out. We're looking at, hopefully the vaccine and all of these things to help us return to some sort of state of normalcy.
Yeah.
And but what will be left? Will we continue focusing only on streaming? Will suddenly there'll be this just great renaissance of movie palaces? Because during COVID, of course, we saw this amazing renaissance of drive-ins.
Yeah.
And will that become a new norm again? Will they come back? So they're just a million unanswered questions. And in the meantime, drive-in screen, theatrical screen, and our small screen has to be filled with something, and that's our opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I hope.
Well, thank you so much, Courtney, for joining us today on the Indie Film Group show. I loved your story about the sad Easter egg, and then the Claudia Cardinal pregnancy Easter egg. That's really interesting. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch Once Upon a Time in the West. If anyone's watching, I think you guys should go and look for those too. It's a great movie. And Courtney, do you have anything that you want to promote that's coming out soon or in the future?
Well, I had my last book was actually I've got it right here. My last big one.
Yeah. Where can we get it?
Here's another edit. Okay. And there it is. Oh, there it is. Western Portraits. I did this with the filmmaker Steve Carver, and it's a wonderful book. It's what we did is we took photographs of 85 character actors, but did it in the style of the period Western with the very long exposures and on film and everything else. So it literally, Steve Carver duplicated the photographic process of the 1880s. And then I wrote all the profiles of all the actors. Cool. And yeah, it's a wonderful book. You saw David Carradine's on the cover, and that turned out very, very well. And I'm very pleased with that. And as far as the I do a lot of commentaries and on-camera stuff for movies. We just had Total Recall come out on Tuesday, and I wrote a documentary that's on that release called Total Excess: How Carolco Pictures Changed Hollywood. And also, and I co-produced that with Dan Griffith of Ballyhoop. But, and gosh, coming out, I would say, and just recently, commentaries and all that stuff, How to Make a Monster, War of the Colossal Beast, the 20-film Hammer set from Mill Creek, the Inner Sanctum set, Walter Hill's Geronimo coming out in January. Then a bunch of westerns. A Don Siegel's movie, The Lineup. I just did that for the British company Indicator, and just did. Yeah, I've done this over 100 times, and so it's fun. It's fun. I love it. And next year, 2021, I think I have an average of at least 2 Blu-ray releases a month of me yakking about movies and doing commentaries and all that stuff. But hopefully, I love talking about other people's movies, obviously. But looks like I'll be making some of my own again, so that's always a good thing.
Well, good. We can't wait to see them. How can we keep up with you and your work? Do you have a website?
Yes, I do. ccjoyner.com, which needs to
Perfect.
be updated. But yeah, and I'm on Facebook always, bugging everybody.
Okay, I'm gonna add you on Facebook. Is that okay?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Courtney, for joining us again today.
Oh, well, thank you.
This has been a wonderful conversation. So thank you so much. I definitely have learned a lot, and I've taken a lot of notes. So
God.
I think you've helped me out a lot. So I'm really excited for the future.
Oh, well, good. Well, thank you. Well, what you're doing sounds awfully cool to me.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, and I hope you're enjoying your day in Sherman Oaks, okay?
Thank you very much. This was a blast.
Okay. Have a good day, okay?
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
And all right, guys, thank you guys so much for joining us for another episode of the Indie Film Group. Thanks for tuning in. We won't be having an episode next week for Christmas, but we'll be joining again the following week. So stay tuned for that one. Let's keep growing together as filmmakers. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to like the video and like the page, and we'll see you next week. If you want to be a guest on our show, just email me at brianna@hecticfilms.com.
Love me. Cut. Man, this movie sucks. I'm out of here. What am I gonna do? I'm out of money.
Are you trying to make a movie, but you're running out of locations, crew, or even money? Buy my book, Cheap Movie Tricks, today and invest in your filmmaking career.
Love me. Cut. Man, this movie sucks. I'm out of here. What am I gonna do? I'm out of money.
Are you trying to make a movie, but you're running out of locations, crew, or even money? Buy my book, Cheap Movie Tricks, today and invest in your filmmaking career.